Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano, and our guest tonight is James Holm from Fort Wayne Trails. James, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful, sir. How are you?
I am great. So we have some great weather outside. Have you been out on the trails the last couple days?
No.
You've been too busy working on trail stuff.
I've been working, which I'm sure my coworkers will be happy to hear. No, I haven't been outside, but I plan to try to get out a little bit. And, you know, this is like fake spring number one.
Yeah.
So,
and then we'll be slapped back into reality.
Yeah, in a couple days it'll be cold again, so we have time.
Yeah.
And we'll get out there soon. How about you?
I have not, because yesterday I worked I taught a class that went until like 7:30. So I was able to open my windows when I got home for about half an hour.
Nice.
So that was good. But I am eager to get outside, but it's not going to happen today either. So by the time I can get outside, it's going to be cold again.
It's all right.
Yeah. So I have to disclaim that for this episode, for our listeners, there's going to be a lot of trails nerdery because James is the community engagement manager for Fort Wayne Trails. Mm-hmm. I'm on the Trails board. We're both big Trails fans. So if you don't like Trails stuff, this is probably not the episode for you.
Or maybe we can sell you on it.
Or maybe we'll change your mind. People are already tuning out.
They're bye. See you later, guys.
That's right. So for the three people who are left remaining listening to us, you know what this is all about, James. You have been a faithful podcast listener for at least a day. So we talk about your career path. We talk about the organization you work for, and then we talk about some of the projects you're working on. So I want to start with your career path because I met you briefly when you were at Summit City Bikes, but I want to start before that. Mm-hmm. Talk about if my quick research into you, which was about 20 seconds on your LinkedIn profile, is accurate. You went to Northrop High School, correct?
That is true.
Did you grow up in Fort Wayne?
Yes.
All right, so take us from growing up in Fort Wayne to current day.
So born and raised Fort Wayne, Indiana. Went to Northrop High School, normal high school shenanigans. After high school, went to IPFW. Before I was probably ready to go to IPFW, was working retail jobs. I found it to be more entertaining to make $8 an hour and chase girls around than to go to school. And I just didn't really dig it, so I stopped going. Around that time, started playing music and bands, so that kind of took over a little bit too. Worked some retail jobs, and then I started working for Centennial Wireless when it was still here in Fort Wayne, which was eventually purchased by AT&T.
Yep.
But that really took my retail career into like customer service fully.
Yep.
So I did over-the-phone customer service for Centennial Wireless, which teaches you a lot.
I may have screamed at you at one point.
You probably did, yeah.
It's possible.
And then maybe you apologized afterwards, maybe you didn't.
I probably did. I've gotten a lot nicer in recent years. So.
I believe that. So that's where my customer service, education really began. I left there to work for Comcast.
Okay.
And this is still like my early 20s probably. I was maybe 23, 24, something like that. And did on-the-phone customer service for Comcast. A whole nother version of customer service, and
not a lot of people calling you to say how happy they are.
No, and if you take people's SpongeBob away, like they're upset.
Yeah, sure.
So you learn a lot about customer experience, and I worked for Comcast on the phones for maybe like 2 years, and then had an opportunity to apply to be a direct sales rep, which they're the folks that have special deals. They come knock on your door. And they say, hey, we see you have this other provider. Yeah. Here's the deal we can offer you. And that's a brutal job.
So you're literally door to door?
Yes.
Wow.
12 months out of the year.
Oh, boy.
And the people who are cut out to do that job can make a lot of money.
Yeah, sure.
And
I take it you were not one of them.
As a 24-year-old, was not.
Yeah.
The money was good, but the lifestyle was terrible.
Yeah.
And so...
A good job if you're built for it, but most people aren't built for it.
Yeah. So, but still learning about customer service, and, those organizations take the time to you're going to spend weeks practicing and learning customer service before they let you touch a customer. Around this time, maybe a couple years before, I had started getting really into bikes.
So was that true when you were a kid, or was that just...
Yeah, I mean, as much as like anybody
Yeah.
is, and then you become a teenager and you're like, cars.
Yeah,
Bicycles are not what I'm into.
Sure.
And then around like 19, 20, 21, we started building tall bikes and causing trouble and got into fixed gears. And I lived with a bunch of buddies, and we just had a spare room that's just full of greasy bike parts.
Okay.
I apologize to whoever owned that house. We destroyed the carpet with greasy bicycle parts.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, I was commuting to Comcast by bike. That was just, I lived downtown. It was just kind of what we did.
Yeah.
And at that time, Summit City Bicycles was hiring just a bike builder.
Okay.
And I said, please let me come build bicycles here. I obviously had a customer service background.
Yeah.
And they saw that and they knew that. So started there as a bike builder 11 years ago, something like that now.
So I'm going to ask a really stupid question.
Yeah.
A bike builder is someone who takes the unassembled bike and turns it into an assembled bike.
You have
correct?
earned all of your salary today, Anthony Giuliano. Yeah, so the bikes come in on a pallet.
Yeah.
You build them. You're not a mechanic. You're not doing much else. You're
Sure.
that's where you start a lot of
Yeah.
times in a bike shop.
Sure.
It's just assembling bikes. So from there, I did that for a little while, and they knew I had worked in retail my whole life, so that transitioned me to sales.
Sure.
And at that time, the shop wasn't doing a lot. I mean, Instagram had just kind of been born.
Yep.
There was some other, Facebook was around, but people were just sort of starting to utilize it. And me as a youngster in my mid early 20s was like, we need to be...
Yeah, and they were like, you're young, you know all this stuff.
Do it. Here's a computer.
Sure.
Yeah, so basically I sort of started their existence on social media or doing any sort of like marketing like that. That over the years just turned into being like their full-time events coordinator, doing all the social media, all the marketing there, basically anything that was public facing, which got me onto a lot of like for Fitness Committee, working with Ronald McDonald Charity House, a lot of working with Fort Wayne Trails, working with, Frankie Park Mountain Trails, Mountain Bike Trails, Three Rivers Velosport, like a ton of organizations. So that kind of kick-started me there.
Yeah.
Was there for 10 years. An opportunity to do something new came up with Fort Wayne Trails, and I took that leap, and I've been there for about a year and a half now.
So Summit City for 10 years.
Yeah.
So
I grew up there.
Was it difficult to leave? Was that a hard decision?
I took way too long to answer that question, didn't I? At the time, I was ready.
Pause,
I was ready to try something else. Like it can get really hectic in a place like that in the summer and the spring. I was in there the other day, and it was just the sun comes out and it's full-blown chaos.
Sure.
And then it's wintertime and it gets slow in the bike shop, and everybody likes to pick on each other a little bit, and then you're never ready for it to be warm and full-blown again. So I was ready to try something else for sure.
Sure. So how did you find out about the Trails position? How did you end up in that position? What was the transition? What did that look like?
I think I just saw it online.
Okay. All right.
And so the transition was, hey, look, that's right up my alley.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about trails. Obviously, I've built some relationships that help me sort of already know the day-to-day and the lingo and the events and some of that.
Yeah.
And I think that trails needed some help at the time.
Yeah.
There wasn't consistent branding and advertising and talking and going on. So I thought there was something I could offer.
Yeah, well, I mean this as a compliment. Your presence on the staff has made me kind of obsolete as a volunteer because, I will say that one of the things I genuinely like about being a Trails volunteer, not only great board and people who are engaged and who want to help, but a great staff. We have like the dream team of Trails staff. You have Megan, the executive director, who has a background in trails and who really is into it. Angie, who commutes by bike, who's a former nonprofit executive director. Joy, who is appropriately named because she's awesome and keeps all the trains running on time. Yeah. And I remember when I found out that you were interested in the position, I was like, wait a minute, I know that guy and he's already been involved, so he'd be great. But at the time, there was no real... Angie was doing the best she could to do 2 jobs, but there was a need to tell the story and no bandwidth to tell the story in the way it needed to be told. So that was... When did you join Trails? How long has it been?
About a year and a half.
Okay. All right. So that obviously changed, and you had kind of a blank slate to work with almost.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just started with, I think, like the very basis of like, let's tell people who we are, why we exist, and spread the joy of trails, sort of, and then build from there into some other content.
Yeah.
And I also jumped in basically like right before one of the strangest years to work at an organization.
Yeah.
Especially as somebody who's trying to plan events and
Yeah.
do health fairs and be not just like a social media manager, but a community engagement manager, somebody who's supposed to be out engaging with the community. And that, thankfully for, the internet and social media, we were able to, keep that ball rolling, and we got to do some videos and do some other cool stuff, and hopefully get to do some more of that as things get back to normal. But
yeah, well, and trails had a great year in terms of usage because it was one of the few things that people could access, get outside and safely be out on the trails. But it was not a great year in terms of income, which for trails means fundraising income because events were canceled and a lot of different factors. So, our hope is that people who never experienced the trails before, who had limited experience, having used the trails, will become advocates for it, and that will grow over time. But, it was a weird year to start a job, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a 45% increase in 2020, something like 660,000 trail use counts, which is wild. I mean, you send everybody to work from home.
Yep.
And as much as we all absolutely worked 9 to 5 while we were at home, wink, wink.
Of course we did, yes.
If you can go outside and it's summertime and you can't do anything else, people just, mobbed the trails almost to like we would get phone calls about this section of trail is too busy. And I'm like, okay, well, we have 120 miles of trail. Let me tell you about some areas that you might like that aren't as populated as like the 4 trail loop. So, it did give us an opportunity to see maybe some areas that we weren't promoting or conversations we could have to talk about areas of the trail that people might not know about, which is important. So
tell me a little bit about being in community engagement in your case, which obviously involves marketing for a nonprofit versus a business like Summit City. A recent guest we had on the podcast was Matt Wire, who does marketing for the Literacy Alliance, and he talked about some of the challenges and some of the good things about that, but some of the challenges. From your perspective, what's different about working at a nonprofit? Maybe, feel free to state the obvious, but maybe some things that aren't so obvious.
Yeah, it is different, but it feels very similar. I mean, like at the end of the day, you're sort of asking for money, which is the end. In retail, you want retail dollars, and as a nonprofit, you need to fundraise to continue your mission and to be able to build trails and continue your work. There's more of a message and a reason when you work for a nonprofit. The reason at a bike shop or whatever is, like, this bike's cool and you want it. Here's the features and benefits of the thing. And with trails, they honestly feel real similar. For me, it's sort of about creating a space. So like bike shop, for example, when you walk in the door and this isn't necessarily like social media marketing, but when you walk in the door of a retail establishment, the goal for that establishment should be for it to be a place where you feel at home right away, where the staff is your friend, where you feel comfortable, where you're not pressured. But at the end of the day, like, they want you to spend money. So you're kind of nurturing this perfect balance between like this cool, safe space. Let's post pictures and talk about all the good things. But then there's like hey, this doesn't exist without you, just like a local business doesn't exist without a customer. So and it can't just be all one or the other. You really have to create a balance of, the ask versus the give. And I'm still learning a lot of because I don't come from fundraising, so I'm learning about community foundations and grants and we're part of a bigger regional thing, really. And so learning all of those things and learning how to promote and talk about them in a way that doesn't just turn people off immediately. Because as soon as you get into some of that, really detailed boring stuff like most of the folks have already tuned out on this. You got to keep it entertaining and make it digestible for people, which hopefully I do.
Yeah. So let's talk about this organization called Fort Wayne Trails, because it's, I think when people think of Fort Wayne Trails, they say, oh, they're responsible for paving the trail and maintaining the trail and everything else, when that's really not entirely true. So from your perspective, how do you describe Fort Wayne Trails to people when they ask you about it?
Sure. So I'm not going to give you my elevator pitch because I know how you feel about elevator pitches. So this is sort of like the James version. So we're a community partner and an advocate. Yeah. We work with the local municipalities to figure out what people want. And then we take that information and we have conversations with the county, the city, with the state to help prioritize projects or to help create new ones that they may not be seeing.
So really it is listening to how the communities want trail systems to develop and then being responsive to that through advocacy and linkages with the municipalities.
Correct. And we're really lucky here to have a greenways and trails staff at the city level, which is really uncommon for a lot of cities. So the city has a budget and they have a plan, and the mayor's been, really passionate about building trails and bringing connectivity to Fort Wayne. And so we're a partner in that. And there are some projects that just are Fort Wayne Trails projects, and we will fundraise and get the bids and kind of do the full process. But for the most part, we advocate and we work with the city, and then we have them as a partner to build and maintain. And maintenance is kind of split between the city and the county, depending on where the trails lie. But I don't have a city job. That's everybody's favorite thing to ask me. Like, what's it like to work for the city? And I'm like, I don't know. I work for a nonprofit with 4 people. So that's, and honestly, that's one of the biggest things that we have to educate people on, is you see Fort Wayne Trails and you just assume that it is a one-stop shop. But it is really a partnership between us, the nonprofit, and city, county, state.
Including entities like the Parks Department, because and this is a public service announcement. But if there is a closure of the trails, you guys don't control that. That is the Parks Department, correct?
So that's Amy still at the city. In a partnership. So this is where it gets like a little gray, because there's Fort Wayne Parks and Recreation that does do some maintenance. They will plow certain sections of the trail. If it's a park loop, they help keep that clean. There's the city, which has its own greenways and trail staff, which fills the kiosks with maps and does the closures on the website and will close the gates and things like that. And then there's us, who post pictures on the internet and fundraises. So we don't get our hands as dirty as they do, but we try.
So let me ask you a question. I guess everything I've been doing is asking you questions, but let me ask you another question. So I think our trail system is awesome. And there's people who are listening to this who maybe have never been on the trails or only have limited experience with the trails. How does your experience, taking your sort of Fort Wayne Trails employee hat off, how do you think it compares to other trail systems, and why is Fort Wayne, how is Fort Wayne positioned in terms of its assets in trails and all that stuff? Are we in a better place than other communities? What's your opinion on that?
I mean, I think we're in a great place, especially like regionally from what I've seen. With 124 miles is massive. And over 60 of that was just in the last 10 years. So it took from like the 70s to, I think, I'm going to probably get this number wrong, I think it was 2017 was like the 100th mile. I mean, it took a long time to do that, and then we've done a lot. I honestly haven't been on a lot of like the other. I've been on like Cardinal Greenway, a little bit on the Pumpkin Vine, some of those, but they're all smaller, and they really, to me, feel more like a recreational trail, where ours certainly is that, but because ours is becoming so connected and so citywide, it really gives people the opportunity to use it for more than that. So to use it for commuting, to use it for shopping, to use it for leisure, gives it sort of a like multifaceted, multi-purpose use trail. Where a lot of people do just see them as like, oh, you mean the bike trails?
Yeah.
And like they are that to some, but for some they're route to work or to the grocery store or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the trails I had heard great things about, and it is a great trail, is the Swamp Rabbit Trail in Greenville, South Carolina. Okay. So when I was there a few years ago, I made a point to, I'm going to rent a bike and I'm going to go on this trail. And I was like, that's nice, but that's it. It's kind of like point to point.
How far was it?
Oh, it was like 7 miles. Sure. And it was great, don't get me wrong, but I'm used to, I was walking on the towpath trail on Sunday, before the weather got warm. I was walking on the towpath trail, and the person I was with, Dana, hi Dana, we were talking about the fact that when I lived Southwest, I could get from basically 14 Scott Road to New Haven with very limited crossing of traffic. You have to go through downtown, but there's bike lanes and there's trail. I think that's unusual. I think that's pretty great, and I actually think it's somewhat underappreciated in our community.
And I think that's one of the big benefits we have here with our partnerships with local government. Yeah. A lot of those small trail systems, that would be like if they had a small organization like Fort Wayne Trails that was doing all of it. Yeah. And so their budget just gets, if they raise $3 million, it's gone in a mile of trail. Yep. Whereas here we write grants, the city write grants, they also have a budget, and we can really prioritize and work through projects and get a lot more done. Yeah. Even if it's like a construction company, clears the path and does all the studies and does all that, and then the city of Fort Wayne can lay the asphalt. Yep. Or there's different ways to make more trails more economical, and we can just build more.
Yeah, so if you have limited experience on the trail, you've never been on the trail, you do not have to be an avid biker, you don't have to be a runner, you can just walk. You can use it for commuting, if you will, to get to point A to point B. So definitely check it out. I think it's one of the best things about our community. All right, I want to talk about some of the big things you're working on. One of the things that we like to do on this podcast is to help other folks, marketers and others, understand, what are some of the big rocks you're trying to move uphill, the big projects that are keeping you up at night. What are some things you're working on right now that might be of interest to the people who listen to this?
So one of the biggest things that we're working on right now, and it's just about done, is we're going to launch a new trail user survey in conjunction with the launch of the 2021 Trail Map, which is something that we put out every year, in an attempt to really talk to not just trail users, but really talk to people who would not consider themselves trail users, and try to identify hurdles or barriers people might have to trail use, whether it's just an educational thing, like you don't know, like maybe you do use the trail every day, but you just think it's a sidewalk, and you're not aware of, this goes 20 miles that way, and I could take it to this place that I normally use a car for, or if it is an issue of, it doesn't connect to me, or it doesn't give me what I need, better signage, more lights, we're just trying to figure out what people want, so that we can use that information to really prioritize future projects. And I mean, really that does what we're supposed to be doing, which is taking the opinion of the people, the trail user, and bringing that information to the city and our other partners, and saying, this is what we've found is requested and would be desired, and how can we make some of these things a reality for people. Well,
it's research from the experts, the people who use the trail, or the experts in why you don't use the trail, people who don't, to learn why that is and how we might make it better or accommodate more people. What else? So you get the trail survey, that's obviously a big one. The map is a big one.
The map's a big one, and the map's getting ready to...
Tell us about the map. The map is not just a map, it's other things as well. You have trail-friendly businesses, you have some advertising.
Yeah, so every year Fort Wayne Trails produces the trail map. Most of you have probably seen it in your local library or at a kiosk out of the trails, or in restaurants. We try to get them everywhere when there's places that people are allowed to go to pick physical things up.
Here's how big of a nerd I am. I have one hanging in my home.
Hey, man.
I know.
It's crazy. We're in good company.
Yes, yes. So sorry to interject.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
So not only is it a map that shows, future projects, current trails, obviously it's also a fundraising tool. So we do that in a couple different ways. One of them is with trail-friendly businesses. Mm-hmm. So for a really small fee, you can be featured on our trail map as a trail-friendly business, but the catch, it's not really a catch. One of the agreements is that you offer something to trail users. Mm-hmm. So you offer your business as a water stop or someplace with a restroom, or you offer bike parking or a discount to trail users, something like that. So it's not just like hey, can we have $400 to put you on our dinner placemat?
Yeah.
We try to engage with those businesses, and we find that really everybody that is engaged with us is engaged with trails and wants to be a part of it. So it's not super passive. Like, we have good active partnerships with all of those people.
Yeah. So tell me if this is a representative example. Three Rivers Running Company is a trail-friendly business. Mm-hmm. They offer bottled water to folks if they want it, or a bathroom stop, or one mm-hmm. of those things when they're on the trail, yep. which is good for the trail users. It's obviously good for trails that they're getting that revenue, but for Three Rivers Running Company, it drives traffic into the business and people who might be inclined to shop a little bit, or at least become familiar with the business.
Yeah, we hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to, they're helping support us and support the network. So
yeah.
we want to, have the users support those places as well. So,
yeah.
Hey, everybody, check out your trail-friendly businesses.
So good radio voice, by the way. So you've got the map, you've got the survey. What else are the big projects you're working on?
So every year we do our Puffer Belly race,
yep.
the Puffer Belly Run Walk Stroll. It's July 17th this year, and we're just kind of it's happening. We're in a little bit of hold.
It even happened last year with some constraints on attendees, and having participated in it, it felt very safe, and it was nice to have an event, obviously outdoors, that you could go to and actually participate and feel safe doing it.
Yeah, so that was my first year as race director. Mm-hmm. Great first year to figure that all out.
Yeah.
The first and probably only year we'll ever sell out the race, because we had capacity, restrictions. But we did everything that we could with USA Track and Field to make sure that it was as safe as we could realistically make it with having an in-person event. We didn't have any issues. Everybody was happy. We always do a survey afterwards, and you get all kinds of stuff back in the survey.
Sure.
But we really didn't have any negative feedback. Things are a little bit different this year. We had our event last year, like right before Board of Health mm-hmm. really got involved, so there's some extra stuff to deal with. But we have good friends like Fort for Fitness and some other race directors that I'm kind of working closely with to see what we need to do to make sure that we can have a safe event. And right now, basically, we're just capping registration at whatever the city is allowing for events based on our color.
Sure.
So hopefully by July we can, let it rip, but
yep.
we're being cautious and careful. We obviously want to have something that's safe for participants.
Yeah.
We do offer a virtual option, but I know people are burnt out on that, I feel like, a little bit. So
yeah, it's just not the same. I mean, having done a lot of races in the past, you do it to see people who you've met at previous races.
Right.
You do it for the competition, and it's when you run it on your own, it's just not the same. It's a okay substitute, but it's still a substitute.
Yeah, totally. And we do Trek the Trails with the city is coming up.
Yeah.
This is a major trails commercial, Anthony.
Oh, well, that's this is kind of the goal.
So Trek the Trails, we do that every year with the city of Fort Wayne and city of New Haven and a couple other great partners, where we do an 6 to 8 mile weekly bike ride from a different area of the trail every week. And I've been involved with that almost since its inception with Summit City Bicycles. So as my gig there, I was the caboose. I had a big cargo mm-hmm. bike, and I'd bring tools and pumps and everything you would need to fix a bike
Yeah.
And
well, it's a great service from Summit City Bikes.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a tire that's a little flat, they'll pump it up for you. They'll even, I don't want to overstate what they will do, but they'll do,
they'll do anything.
They'll do anything you ask. They'll check your bike, make sure it's safe. And it's, my experience, I've been to a few of those events. It's a great way to see sections of the trail that maybe you're unfamiliar with because you're with a big group and it's safe and you're not going to get lost.
Yeah, that, and it eliminates some of like the fear of like maybe going out by yourself and getting a flat tire, or, a lot of people pull their bikes out for the first time in the spring, and if they haven't had them in for a tune-up, they can be a little rough.
Yep.
And there's somebody there to fix it for you. I really like that program, and I've seen it from all sides now as an employee at a bike shop, and now as somebody who's in the front of the ride, leading it. I've seen people start that ride as like wide-eyed, like freaked out to ride 8 miles, and then over like 3-4 years buy 6 bikes from Summit City Bicycles and end up doing like cross-country touring and all kinds of wild stuff that started with their little 3-speed cruiser bike. And people really advance, and then they can kind of grow out of it and get involved with the local cycling clubs and start doing a lot more. So if anybody out there listening like is interested in shorter bike rides with cool people that are a nice little community and sort of exploring but not by yourself, it's perfect. I mean, it really is a great program.
Well, and importantly, too, it's not a race. It's not a competition. You can go really slow and still be part of the group. I've seen kids do it. I've seen people who are, significantly older do it, and everybody is happy and safe along the way.
Totally. And I've been in the back and I've been in the front. So I've got to ride 4 miles per hour, and we keep the front under control. So, I mean, we get up like 10, 12 miles per hour, and then we stop halfway and we kind of meet back up and drink some water and turn back around. So it's family friendly. And we average like 60 to 100. I mean, we've had 200 people on a ride before, which is wild. And that's not what it normally looks like. But in the summer, we'll get 60, 70, 80, 100 people, which is wild. I mean, for a bicycle ride.
So the Trek the Trails kickoff is April 20. It's on the website.
We're unprepared.
Yes.
I think it's the 25th.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a
but
Tuesday.
If that's wrong,
the last Tuesday in April, we can confidently say that. But so for all this stuff, if somebody wants to access the map, or they want to see when Pufferbelly is and register, and they want to learn about Trek the Trails, that's all fwtrails.org, correct?
fwtrails.org.
Yes. All right.
You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter.
Okay. All right. And LinkedIn. Don't forget about LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. Yeah, but that's not as exciting.
No, it's not. Not
to you, it might be. You love LinkedIn.
Remember, I'm an old man. So.
No, sir, no.
All right, so we're going to move to the speed round of the show, where I ask you a few quick questions that are just slightly derivative from what we've already talked about.
Is the first question when the first Trek the Trails ride is?
We're going to ask 4 questions.
Okay,
the first question is, when is the first Trek the Trails ride?
It is April 27th.
All right, important note. That is, you have to register for it, correct?
No.
Oh, you don't?
Nope. Okay. So April 27th, first ride. So, okay, you can register in advance because Summit City Bicycles does give away a bike at the end of the season. So that's the only thing that you would need to register for. You can find that information on our website.
Okay.
But it starts at 6:10 is when we roll. Show up.
Okay.
That's all you got to do.
And where is the first Trek the Trails?
It is at the Eagle Marsh towpath trailhead on Ingle Road there.
All right, and if you've never been, and I mean this very genuinely, if you've never been to that part of the trail, it is one of my favorite, if not my favorite stretches of trail. Very quiet. You're close to stuff, but you feel like you're in a positive way in the middle of nowhere. It's a really great stretch of trail. Okay, so now that we have that question over,
there we go.
Give us your best piece of advice for career success or building a career path. And let me preface this a little bit. One of my favorite things about this podcast has been learning the many different ways that people have gotten into the careers that they're in. For some people, it's, they knew when they were very young what they wanted to do and they've stayed on that path. But more often, it's kind of a winding path. Yours was definitely interesting in that it's not a conventional path in some senses. So tell us what you've learned about that you think other people should know.
Do what you want in like the most constructive way. Like, don't, you know, I don't think that if you have a boss or something like that, that you should just not do what they say and do whatever you want.
Good
but
disclaimer.
If there's something that you think could benefit your organization or your job, you know, present it. Try to move in that direction. If you want to launch a YouTube page and it fits within your wheelhouse of what you're doing and you're interested in video, get a GoPro and like figure it out.
Yeah, because you got your drone license.
Yeah, you want to fly, like you want to create drone content, like figure it out. You can get a DJI Mavic Mini 1 for $400. You know, take an online drone class, take your test with the FAA, and it's tedious. You got to get it done when you want to be legit, but like, do it.
Yeah, and all the information's out there. There's really not a lot of barriers other than time to figuring this stuff out.
Yeah, and I mean because I'm not college educated. I don't have a business degree or like tons of, you know, scholastic marketing knowledge.
Yeah.
I saw a need in a job that I was at for community engagement and created it.
Yeah.
And nurtured it and sort of built. And I'm building it on things that I'm passionate about. So hopefully that's, you know, another thing that you can do is enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah.
It won't always be fun because it is work.
Yeah.
But that's all I can really say about like what's gotten me to where I want to be. Is I was working a job in my early 20s that I didn't like anymore. And I said, I will take a huge pay cut to go do this thing that I like.
Yeah.
And I built positions and salary and things out of what I was passionate about doing. And maybe I've been lucky, but if I wouldn't have, you know, tried to do that, I wouldn't be here. And I'm still doing that. I mean, we weren't producing video content, and if we were paying somebody to make it. Yeah. And now, you know, I used to love video when I was younger. Like I grew up skating, and like when I was in high school, like I spent a lot of time on my computer, like editing and like making skate tapes and stuff like that.
Making
and then I got
skater videos.
Man. And then I got away from it, you know, and and now I get to like I'm getting back into it, and like it makes what I do really fun, and it's a beautiful way to showcase who we are and what we are from you know, a really cool perspective, especially with, you know, now being a Part 107 licensed pilot. You know, I can go out and fly the drone and showcase the trails that way.
Well, and it's a great way for people to see the trail system, because one of the things that I believe, and maybe others don't share this, but is our trail system's kind of hidden. That there's times when you kind of come across it if you're on the road, but a lot of it isn't visible from the road. So if you're not familiar with it, you may wonder, what does it look like? How do I get there? And a drone sequence can really make it accessible for folks and help them understand what's out there.
Yeah, it's either hidden or like camouflaged.
Yeah,
because
that's probably a better word. Yeah,
a lot of people, like, it's not always asphalt, and asphalt really gives it away. Like if you see a 10-foot wide piece of asphalt, like that screams trail a little bit more than maybe something like the Lima Road Trail, where it is, or the new Maple Crest Road Trail, where it is concrete. Yeah. And so a lot of people might read that as sidewalk and not understand that. And really, it's the difference between in width between a sidewalk and a trail. But you know, knowing that maybe it is right there and you just don't know. So that's a lot of what I've been trying to do is, you know, highlight all different sections of trail so that people you know, can figure out that they're closer than they thought. Yeah,
well, you know, and going back to your comments about careers, I'm a huge believer in formal education and in higher education, but I also believe it's not the only way to build a career path. And today, if you can have all kinds of degrees, but if you stop learning after you earn your degrees, you're way less valuable than someone who doesn't have a degree, who's committed to continual learning, because stuff's changing so quickly. And I think, you know, it's one of the merits of just having that engine of wanting to learn stuff. You can be more valuable because you know how to fly a drone and you know how to do social media stuff. Those skills are probably more relevant than a lot of the stuff that I learned in a formal MBA program in 2021.
I worked with a lot of people at the bike shop that had degrees.
Yeah.
And they weren't using them. Not that I'm saying don't go to school, kids. But you know, and maybe it's forced me to have to learn more, but I'm learning things that I am passionate about and want to learn. And so.
Well, and you're learning by doing, which is really different. I mean, that's one of the things that I've found, and it took me a long time to figure this out, is, you know, if I'm trying to theoretically figure something out, it's probably not going to stick with me. But if I actually sit down and I apply it right away, it's going to stick with me much more so than if I just am, you know, reading about it or, you know, thinking about how I might use it in the future.
Yeah, and my coworkers, they get to hear like the weird grunts and moans come out of my office as I'm like trying to figure out some Adobe thing that I'm learning off YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, you do that for 6 months and you can make fancy videos with Anthony Giuliano.
or non-fancy videos with Anthony Giuliano.
That works too.
Yeah. So, all right. So that's the first question. The second question is, if somebody stopped you on the trail, not on the street, and asked you, define this organization for me, I'll give you 30 seconds or 60 seconds. What do you want people to know about Fort Wayne Trails?
Yeah. So, I mean, really what I kind of said before, we're a nonprofit partner. We're a community advocate in the growth and development of our trail system. So our goal is to talk to the people, talk to trail users, talk to people who aren't trail users, and take that information and gather it and present it to the city, to community foundations, to whoever, to make sure that we're prioritizing our trail growth in a way that makes sense for its users, for connectivity. And yeah, I mean that's like my basis. Like, what do you do? Like, we share the joys of trails, and we talk about why they exist, and we talk about what we need to help continue them growing at the rate that they're growing.
Yeah, which is a pretty good rate right now, pretty good pace.
It's great.
All right, last question. So your job has been strange and different in the last year, and a lot of people's jobs have been strange and different in the last year. What have you learned about that maybe could help people find some optimism, maybe give them some perspective, maybe make people resilient if they're going through some challenges as marketers, as professionals, just in general? What's your final words of wisdom for us?
And I don't remember who it was. I was listening to one of the previous episodes, and I think this concept came up, and I'm really working on doing it with myself, is putting myself out of my comfort zone a little bit or a lot of it, and saying, like, this isn't going to be the same as it was in the past, and that's probably okay, but we're going to figure out what the new version looks like. And that could be your event. It could be how you come to work every day. It could be the content that you're producing and what maybe that message has transformed. I don't stop, I guess, if that's a generic, like, Nike just do it answer. Like, I just figure it out. We're going to have a race. And we're going to figure out how to do it safely, and we'll turn people away if we have to, but I'm going to figure out a safe way, go through all the right channels, and we're going to do it. If we're going to have a Trek the Trails ride, I want to make sure that the routes make sense, that people showing up make sense, that it's safe, that people, you know, understand. If we're not going to be able to have a big event, we're going to do a virtual auction. Like, you're just, you know, I really just I hadn't done half the events before anyway. And so I'm recreating events that had sort of like a preconceived notion of what they were supposed to be, without ever being able to experience them and then making them something totally different. So
well, and right now it's kind of the best time ever to do that, because if you're ever going to change something, people are getting used to things being different. And I think what I hear you saying is, just because it has to be different doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be worse. And it's a real opportunity to innovate and do things differently and see how it works out.
Yeah, and I like being flexible. Like, and maybe part of my success in, like, wanting to learn and do things is, like, my extreme ADD. But, you know, wanting to always kind of be like this and then this and then this and then this. I think it helps keep me moving. So if you can harness sort of that energy, if you have it, it's been, you know, beneficial for me. Anthony, does that answer your question?
It absolutely does. Yes.
Sometimes I just talk.
Well, welcome to the club. I'm surprised. It's a good thing that there wasn't a third guest on tonight, or they would not have been able to get a word in edgewise.
Sorry, third guest.
Well, hey, thanks for joining me. This has been fun, as my time with you always is.
Indeed.
And I'm going to get you out of here so you can go get in some trail time, since it is nearly 70 degrees on March, whatever today is, the 9th.
Indeed. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, and thanks to all of you who took the time to listen to this episode. And we hope to see you back, or have you hear us later on the Asher Marketing Podcast. That is my very ungraceful ending of this episode. Thanks, and we hope to see you soon.